Picture a dusty, rigid family tree, the kind with heavy oak frames and strict biological lines drawn in faded ink. Society expects you to find your place on it, to replicate the exact path of the generations before you, hitting every expected milestone right on schedule. But instead, you strike a match. You burn the outdated blueprint, and in the ashes, you draw a bold, glowing line connecting yourself directly to the animal sleeping at your feet. People often call this a consolation prize. They roll their eyes at the term fur baby, dismissing it as a quirky, mildly tragic generational fad adopted by people refusing to grow up. But what I've noticed, and this might not be everyone's exact experience, is that calling your pet your child isn't a modern delusion. It's a biological imperative. There's something I came across recently in neurobiology that reframes this entirely. The finding, roughly, is that when you look into your dog or cat's eyes, functional MRI scans show the exact same maternal, emotion, and reward centers lighting up in your brain as a mother looking at a human infant. It triggers the exact same rush of oxytocin, which might explain why the love feels so heavy, so fiercely undeniable, and sometimes so terrifying. Your neurological pathways do not care about DNA. They don't see a pet. They recognize a legitimate, biological child on your family tree. Humans possess an ancient, undeniable evolutionary drive to nurture. It is a survival mechanism woven deep into our marrow. But we are also living in an era where traditional reproduction feels, for a vast majority of young adults, like a terrifying financial liability. Crushing inflation, perpetual housing crises, and systemic instability have made the standard American dream largely inaccessible. The traditional math simply doesn't work anymore. But that ancient nurturing drive doesn't just wither away and disappear because the economy has become hostile. Instead, the human brain executes a brilliant, pragmatic evolutionary workaround. Anthropologists call it alloparenting, the biological urge to care for offspring that aren't strictly your own. You seamlessly graft your maternal or paternal instincts onto an entirely different species. You stand in the pet store aisle on a Tuesday evening, staring at the premium, grain-free food. You calculate the cost in your head, knowing you'll gladly skip your own dinners this week to make it fit the budget. You place the heavy bag in the cart. Why does it feel so absolutely essential to keep this specific creature thriving at your own expense? Because this isn't just about keeping an animal alive. It's an evolutionary strategy. You are ensuring your own psychological survival in a fractured world by finding a safe, tangible place to put your love. It's almost always a Wednesday night when you realize you've spent more time talking to your cat than to any human that week, and you don't actually mind. We have to look at what this love is actually replacing. It's 11 p.m. on a Sunday. You're sitting on the edge of the couch, the cold glow of your phone illuminating the dark room. You read a text from someone who is pulling away, someone whose affection is highly conditional and constantly shifting based on their mood. You set the phone face down on the coffee table. There's a tight, hollow ache sitting just under your ribs. Your dog rests his chin heavily on your knee, looking up at you without asking for anything, without needing you to be impressive or perfectly regulated. You notice the quiet, steady rhythm of his breathing against your leg, the warmth of his fur, but you don't move to pet him just yet. You just let the contrast sit there. In a modern dating era defined by avoidant partners, ghosting, and transactional relationships, the human nervous system is starved for secure attachment. We are exhausted by people who make us constantly earn our place in their lives. What I think might be happening is that the pet acts as a flawless attachment prism. You project your fractured, insecure, historically rejected love into this prism, and the animal refracts it back as pure, unwavering, unconditional devotion. They don't withhold affection when they're stressed out by work. They don't decide they need space to figure themselves out. They offer a baseline of relational safety that the modern human world rarely, if ever, provides. But if we look a layer deeper, If we really examine the hidden mechanics of this daily care, the dynamic shifts entirely. We assume the meticulous routines are entirely for them. We think the perfectly timed feedings, the measured evening walks, and the gentle, hushed soothing during a thunderstorm are all about the animal's survival. But research into somatic psychology tends to suggest something far more inward-facing. The finding, roughly, is that the physical act of regulating another mammal's nervous system acts as a biological mirror, forcefully regulating your own in real time. Which might explain why, when you finally calm your anxious dog down, your own shoulders drop for the first time all day. This is the somatic anchor. By dedicating yourself to the absolute safety of this animal, you are utilizing a subconscious biofeedback loop. You are using the pet as a localized, living anchor to self-soothe. You aren't just raising a pet. You are actively, methodically reparenting your own unhealed inner child. The profound gentleness, the endless patience, and the unconditional presence you offer them is the exact gentleness you were likely denied when you were small. You are giving yourself the emotionally secure childhood you never had, transposed onto a creature that will never, ever betray the investment. And honestly, recognizing that is a lot cheaper than a decade of therapy, even with the unexpected emergency vet bills. You are the sole architect of this dynamic. You maintain this daily rhythm, you scoop the litter, you walk in the freezing rain, because it is the one space in your life where you have absolute agency over the emotional safety of your environment. So the next time someone makes a passing, condescending joke about you being just another childless dog person, you don't have to absorb that shame. You can quietly recognize that they are looking at an outdated map of human kinship. If there's someone in your life who shares this exact kind of cross-species family, who treats their animal with this level of reverence, maybe send this to them. Let them know they aren't crazy for loving this hard. Because the reality is, the world is loud, the economy is unforgiving, and human connection is increasingly fragile. You found a way to keep your heart open in a system seemingly designed to close it. What if this intense bond isn't a sad substitute for traditional milestones, but a highly evolved, fiercely intentional act of chosen family? You didn't replace a human child. You built a sovereign bloodline.